Got a good thing coming, and it's all I need. Everything I wanted is in front of me.
All right, welcome everybody to Who Hates Dave podcast. We are on episode 2 of the podcast with a new member.
A Fairbanks man.
Obviously, a Fairbanks man.
That's like almost as cool as being a Florida man.
Josh Church. Do you prefer Josh or Joshua?
Just don't call me late for dinner and we'll be okay.
All right, perfect. So Josh, how with everything going on, how do you feel, and kind of what were your thoughts leading up to where we are today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for improving the state and fixing it. There's a lot of reasons why I didn't want to do this. Got 3 kids. My youngest son is 3 months old. So it's going to be a big challenge. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work. But how do you say no to the opportunity to make this state a better state? I don't know how I can look myself and my kids in the mirror and, and say I passed up the opportunity to help solve some of the issues facing the state.
Try and avoid doing that. You're good. You're good. What did the on the record? What did your wife say about you getting involved in?
Yeah, well, we talked about it pretty extensively and several times, and we all agreed the answer was no.
That didn't go over well with me.
No, and then we talked about it some more, and then I talked with my wife some more, and I think her position is she trusts me and she supports me, and how the hell are we going to do this? But okay.
Get her done. That's
Yeah.
how we do it. That's the Alaska way. Get her done.
So Dave, how'd you kind of arrive at your selection with Josh here? He's not listening, by the way. Just tell us.
Yeah, he's sitting right next to me. So it was kind of a long process. I talked to a lot of people up there, and we in kind of the neat part of the story is we talked to several people. Who do you think? And we came up with Josh's brother, Seth. And
That might have been a good pick.
yeah. So is what we did is I spoke at length with Seth, and great guy, but his heart's not in. He loves to help and loves to volunteer, but he says, my brother Josh, who I had met before, he says Josh is the one for you because this is his thing. He says actually being in politics, and Josh had written some great articles that I liked on the permanent fund, the endowment model that we'll talk about at some point in the future at length. And I really like that. And so we started doing a deep dive into his background, we're looking for problems, and absolutely no problems. And then, things like combat veteran, Marine Special Operations, Marine Corps Special Operations. It was just fired on all cylinders. And then we started talking, and the first, 1, 2, 3 times he'd say no, and I said, well, I'll call you back in a few days when we get to the right answer, because that was definitely not the right answer. And he fills the squares that we really wanted, which was he's young, he's very involved professionally in finance. We need that because this finance issue that's facing the state has got to be dealt with once and for all. The permanent fund dividend, the endowment model, all these things, because so much of our distractions in the state come from our finance challenges. And so I needed that. And then he's got a great perspective on the interior and Fairbanks. I didn't, and so I just wanted to. He filled all those squares, and then we see. Maybe the important thing is we have the same worldview. I mean, identical worldview on things, and from issues of faith to morality to finances to how government should function, and those are very important things because you can't have a running mate that's opposed to you. And when we get into office, he'll be my primary advisor. Unlike historically, the lieutenant governor is not that. Historically, actually, the lieutenant governor can run independent completely. of the governor, and you could wind up with two folks in office from different parties, certainly different worldviews. So we don't have that. This is a very cohesive team, and I'm looking forward. Well, we're already working quite a bit together, but looking forward to working with them in office.
Awesome. So we noticed in the media after the announcement, I want to circle back to this a bit. I found it funny. Some of the specific news outlets were not referring to him by his name in the headlines, and they were all pretty much referring to him as the Fairbanks man or a Fairbanks man.
Do you think that's because like Fairbanks and Anchorage kind of have this like underlying like competitiveness? Like why are you not just a Fairbanks man? Why is that the name that the lovely media has chosen to use?
I would ask that reporter.
I don't know if I've read a story that I was personally involved with in my life that was printed in the newspaper that didn't have some errors in it. So,
So what you're saying is the media should do better and we should hold them to a higher standard.
Podcasting has really taken off for a reason. A lot of podcasters have more views than the mainstream media. So I think people are hungry for truth tellers and people that do a really good job reporting the facts.
Well, that's kind of how this podcast came to be because the media, I feel like, did Dave not so fairly, and now we get to reach out to the people who are actually asking the question. Just go straight around the media, answer the questions. And
Joe
tell the
Rogan
truth.
kind of led that way, and I really love that long format, not the gotcha, 15-second question and answer. I just don't like that. If you're going to talk policy, you got to talk in depth, and the people are going to support you, vote for you based on that in-depth analysis, and that's why this format is so good.
I just think they without us knowing, offered us a great marketing opportunity. The Fairbanks man.
The Fairbanks man. Now no other Fairbanks man can be chosen in this race because we've already established
Every other person for Fairbanks is
not
going to
the Fairbanks
No,
man.
I mean it's copyright infringement at this point.
Great.
Like no one knows what's going on. All right, let's jump into. Actually, one more before we start. Josh, what did you think of Who Hates Dave when you kind of heard about it being into the mix?
I thought, that's edgy. I don't know if that's a good idea. It's kind of highlighting your negatives, but maybe. Then I watched it and I was like, all right, yeah, that's pretty good.
Get it?
It's been good.
So let's get into it. Scott writes, the mayor's office was in constant tumult. It was tumultuous, I assume, and drama when you were in office. How are you going to avoid that as governor?
Well, it's a different environment, and I would say look at the tumult that was in the mayor's office. I got elected by a majority of the people. I'm a conservative. I fought for my values. It got so bad where they would taking the authority, the constitutional authority of the mayor, and taking it away. They were just started to administer. I had to take them to court. So, yeah, I could have sat back and let the assembly do whatever they want, but guess what we would have? We would have what we have right now, and we would have had it 3 years earlier. I was elected to do a job, and I did that job, and I'll just be clear. They did the fighting, I did the administering, and they didn't like it, so they created the tumult.
As far as the administration itself, and we talked about it a bit last episode, this go around is people you have around you. A lot of questions are coming in about,
Right.
who's going to be in your corner, in your office, your admin, stuff like that.
Are these attached to job applications?
I think this is the combo that we had in the car where you talked about like loyalty is so important because a lot of the people in the first administration during the mayoral term was people were just advocating for themselves to come into office so that they could get the next job. It was never like, I want to do good in this job. It was, I'm using this as a stepping stone to get to the next one. And when you're new to public office, as Dave was, you don't learn that in a book or someone telling you that. You learn it from experience. Plus, you had the media who were, waiting, frothing at the mouth, waiting for someone to drop dead from the administration and then write a story about it. Whereas this is just executive function. People leave jobs, they start
Right.
new careers somewhere else, et cetera.
Can I jump in here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I understand where you're going with that loyalty, but I would almost change it to say, character and integrity, right? Warren Buffett has something where he says, if you've got people working for you and they don't have character and integrity, you'd prefer them to be dumb and lazy, right? You only want people to be smart and ambitious and efficient when they have character, right? And so I think we need to find people of character.
Well, and we learned, not unlike a lot of executives learn, and certainly Donald Trump did in his first term. And it seems anachronistic, but you hire for loyalty first, because that can't be taught. That's like Josh said, that's a character issue. The skill set, unless it's highly skilled, like a lawyer or an engineer or something like that, you can teach someone all this stuff. You can teach them admin. You can teach them nearly everything, but you can't teach loyalty. And like Alexa said, we came into office and people had their own agendas. They go and you got to learn when you come into an administration. There's one agenda, and that's the agenda of the elected official. There's only one person in the room, whether it's mayor or governor. There's only one person in the room that wants a statewide election, and you've got to toe the line. You just do. Don't sign up if you can't do that. Don't create your own agendas.
Do you think you're a little more keen to it?
I'm a lot more keen to it. Learn some hard lessons in that, and we've talked about that before, is that, I spent 42 years as a professional aviator, and I'd come to work every day, and it didn't matter what the person was, whether the military or the airlines, they told me the truth all the time. Didn't care about their politics. Sometimes I knew their politics, and I'd still trust them, and I could trust them. I come into politics, and you don't know if anyone's telling you the truth. And that's why loyalty is so important.
I think that's actually one of the reasons why we work so well together. So we both come from a military background, and in the military, there's a chain of command. It doesn't mean one person's better or not, but so we haven't had it yet, ironically, but at some point we're going to disagree about something, and we're going to do that quietly behind closed doors. And maybe I'm going to convince him that my way's right. I usually think my ways are pretty good. But
Don't we all, right?
Me too.
Bottom line, if we have a disagreement, once he says, okay, we're done talking about it, this is the way to go. When we open that door and walk out, I'm going to approach it like it's my idea. This is the team's idea. And
Josh, I think when I told you to stop doing this, you did it more. So I'm starting to have concerns.
He likes to do things his own
The
way.
table's vibrating.
yeah, sorry about that.
All good, buddy. All good. Podcasting is it's actually a skill,
You don't have to convince me of it.
Yeah.
You just have to train me.
No worries.
But you're loyal.
yeah.
All right.
of good
Dawn writes, I really appreciate your efforts as mayor despite the smear campaign that your opponents ran against you from day one. I walk my dogs in Ruth Arkin Park.
Arcan Park.
Access to the trailhead off Elmore Road, where it dead ends above Campbell Creek, south of very descriptive location here. As I'm sure you will recall, the opposition made a big issue of your snow removal policies and practices. The last 2 winters of your administration, the snow crews piled the snow in 8-inch, I assume they mean 8 feet, piles directly in front of the trailhead. I wondered why they didn't just push it to the side. Union employees co-oping with oppos, question mark. That is
I
the
think
question.
it's what is she's getting at.
Dawn, I assume, is a man.
Is it DAWN?
Nope.
DON. Okay. Well, I assume is what that is the suspicion is in the midst of the snow, the record snowfalls and all we had to do, people, municipal union workers piled snow, I guess, on a trailhead or at the beginning of a trail to help hurt me. I highly doubt that. I never had trouble with the unions whatsoever. I was a 30-year card-carrying union member, and I still have the card in my wallet. I'm not here to fight unions. I'm here to just work with folks and get things done. So if that happened, that may have been one person, but I highly suspect that isn't the case. They were just looking for places to put snow, is what I suspect.
There was so much.
There was
snow.
and like this year we've got next to nothing, and people are complaining. I mean, we had 132 inches of snow.
We actually ran out of places to load snow because the snow
Right.
dumps were turning people away.
Well, I had to
because
emergency authorize snow dumps in South Anchorage because we had no place to put snow.
it's in code how high snow can be stacked.
Yep.
And once we reached that threshold, we actually had to go in and stack some more.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff people don't know.
Yeah.
The more you know.
And my own disclaimer, I do know how to read quite well. I'm reading the teleprompter exactly as it's presented to me.
Yeah.
If I sound like an idiot, it's not the case. Yeah. Teresa Nangle Obermeyer, PhD. On the website,
right.
we only ask for first names to keep anonymity, but she went full send, which we appreciate.
Love that.
Facebook group Elect Alaska Attorney General 2026, in quotations. All the other 49 states have elected office holders who are required to be members of their representative bar associations. Alaska does not. Alaska is the only state in the United States that does not have an American Bar Association accredited law school. Please join this Facebook group. Elect Alaska Attorney General 2026. No question. She
question
just
there?
wants you in
Okay.
the group.
Do other states elect their attorney general like they do?
I
with,
think
like,
there's 7 or 8 states that do not elect their attorney general. All the rest elect. I think that's the number 7 or 8, something like that.
It almost makes you wonder the same thing with the LG versus the governor. You could have two different ideologies. And I think one of the things you want is to have a attorney general that is in support of the administration.
Well, and you could
not-
also, too, within the state, the LG does a different thing. In this state, the LG represents the governor in the office, and then they may have a completely different prescription in a different jurisdiction. So there's a lot of unknowns there.
Stan question mark writes, should the Samoans in the Whittier case be prosecuted for voter fraud? I'm unfamiliar.
I'm familiar at a very thin level on that issue, and I can't comment on that. We got to trust our law enforcement agencies on that.
Will, are you going to now change the name of the site to Who Hates Dave and Church?
Let me think. No, we're not.
Margaret, I read an op-ed that talked about your stance on grand jury. Is it true? Or what is your current stance? It's a bigger issue for everyone. It's also a bigger issue than anyone seems to think. This is my big issue to capture your vote.
Right. So the article was, and we've got an editorial piece that I wrote on that, and that goes out when?
soon.
Soon. So I went, and I'll just give you the whole story. Went down to a meet and greet down in Land's End, Homer, and this issue is a big thing especially on the peninsula, but we're hearing about it across the state, the grand jury issue. And I stood in, and what this question came up probably 2 or 3 times during this talk that I gave. And is what I said was that I am not informed enough to make a decision. And this was a decision that in their mind should counter a Supreme Court order, Supreme Court Order 1993. And I said, I am not prepared to answer that question. I will be prepared at some point in the future. We are working towards that. I've sat down with a couple of folks, Mario Bird, Bob Bird, and got informed. I'm doing my homework, is what I'm saying. And I said that quite clearly. And I said, I'm not going to stand here and tell you what I think you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. You want to hear that I'm going to somehow go to war with the Supreme Court of the state over this issue. And I may at some point in the future once I become more informed. And we're working actually quite diligently on that. To these people, it's very simple because they've been dealing with this for 5 or 6 years. I've been dealing with it for a couple of months, and and I've got a lot of other issues that we're dealing with in a campaign, policy issues. So I said, that was my answer. And then I wake up a couple of days later and someone that was in the room, and a guy who writes quite a bit, great guy, actually. I agree with a lot of what he says and writes. And he says, and to summarize it, Dave did a good job. The crowd liked him. His answers on everything is what any conservative would like. But in the number came out, he says, I agree with him 99.9% of the time, but he's not fit to be governor because he didn't answer this question correctly. And is what I wanted to say. If I could respond, I won't that way. I'll be, I think, very temperate, which is, when are you going to get your divorce? And he'd say, what? And I says, well, yeah, I know you don't. I've been married for over 40 years. I know you don't agree with your wife 99% of the time, but I'm not going to, respond to him that way. He's actually a good guy, but he's so focused, so target fixated on one issue, and it is the issue to him, and good on him for that. I'll get to my answer, and I suspect, knowing the people who I've already spoken to and how they feel, I will probably have an answer that he will be extremely comfortable with. But I'm not going to start a war in a campaign with the Supreme Court of the state without knowing what I'm talking about. That would be imprudent. It would be pure folly.
I think, and you can talk to this too, Josh. I think a lot of people want their candidate to, I want said person to go to war with the assembly. I want to go to war with the legislature. What is kind of your stance on that? I mean, obviously from your mayoral, time, that was kind of the optics, right? You went to war, and then some people said you were soft. I mean, where do you
I get as many critiques from folks that said you didn't fight enough as I do get this critique that you fought too much. And I think I did a good job because everyone's mad at me. And that I think almost means success in politics these days, unfortunately. But I look at it, and I explain this often, is that there's two different environments. So I had an assembly that was 9-2 and then 9-3 radically against me. I mean, radically. They would say things in private meetings that, well, this proposal Bronson has, say, for this ordinance is a great idea. We're going to vote against it.
Holton Hills.
Yeah, we're going to vote against it because we're not going to give Bronson a win on anything. So we had assembly members who had supported the Holton Hills project for years. And then when I came in and I gave full support to it, because I thought it was a great idea, they said, yeah, we're not going to do it now because we're not going to give Bronson this win, because somehow in their mind I would be perceived as getting a win. They did the same thing on the Navigation Center. And but the legislature is a different animal. It's a 50-50 pretty much. And I'm just going to tell you, they're far less radical. There's a few maybe. And I look forward to working with the legislature, working with especially the Republican caucus, because that's the governor's job, is to lead that caucus. And now I get, I was in a mayor's venue here, a debate format thing on Monday out in the Valley, and I got a little bit ridiculed because they said, well, your job is to not go down there and work with the legislature. Your job is to go down there and fight with them. And I go, yeah, how's that working for us? We don't have a full PFD. We've got a lot of, we've got all kinds of deferred maintenance in the state. We're not getting things done. And that's my problem with the state, is there's too many things that must be done, absolutely must be done. They're not getting done because we're fighting over things. Granted, I'm a man of the right. I just am. And I'll fight for my issues. But at the end of the day, you got to understand that when you go down there, there's 60 other people that have a voice in this. And if you don't think you can work with them, stay out of the job.
Josh, what's your take?
Dave, what's that Reagan quote you're always saying?
Well, oh yeah, you actually listen. And Reagan said it right. He says, when someone agrees with you 80% of the time, they're your friend. So I can go down there. There's going to be people that are hardcore Democrats, and I'm going to agree with them. And if they agree with me enough, they're my friend or my ally. And why would I go down and scream at someone down there who next week on the next issue. I'm going to need their vote to get something that's really important, because they're all human. I'm human. If someone ridicules you long enough, you're just going to say, I'm not going to give them anything. And we
What do you
can't
think?
operate that
What
way.
do you think, Josh?
I think my answer to this, I learned from my uncle, who was a state trooper, and he worked in small towns all around the state for years. And he told me one time a story where he had to arrest this guy, and he was rolling around with him, and it was getting a little out of hand. And two guys came and helped him, and he looked up after they'd gotten it under control. And these were two guys he'd routinely arrested, but they were helping him. And he told me, you treat people with respect and you do your job, and they will remember that. So we can work with people on all these issues. We can fight and do our job like a cop does, like an honorable cop does. We can hold people to account, and we can fight for people on those 20%. But we can work with people on the 80%, right? So you don't have to make this on all or nothing, and you don't make it personal, and you don't demean people, right?
And they're not, an opponent isn't an enemy.
Yeah. Find
It just
common
isn't.
ground where we can work with people. And when we can't, hey, we're going to disagree and we're going to fight on this, but we're going to do it respectfully.
Love that.
Dermot Cole, he's a critic of mine, but maybe a better answer would be to say, I don't think you can do anything in life without getting some resistance and having
Right.
some pushback. And so, yeah, there's people that maybe don't like some of the things I've done. And anytime you do something, and sometimes you say things and you should think, man, I should have done that differently. Certainly my wife sometimes tells me I should have done things differently. So
Oh, you get that too, huh?
almost never, Dave.
Oh,
I mean, me personally, I mean, even getting back to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like people don't handle their own egos very well. And to me, I'm completely opposite. I want to hear the smarter guy in the room tell me
Yep.
what he thinks, and then I can arrive at my decisions about it. But I think until you get to that point where you're willing to argue with some people in a professional and respectful way,
right.
that's how real things get done.
If
you
you're
know?
the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Thomas, the next governor will have to be an excellent administrator and a good manager. Your history as mayor suggests you lack in both areas. Simply giving jobs to the most enthusiastic and loyal applicants doesn't work, as you've discovered.
See, you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, you can't make everyone, but I've learned my lessons the hard way. Not unlike, again, say President Trump or any other, say, general officers that I've worked for. You have to be loyal. See, it's implicit in the military. It's just you're loyal to the mission, you're loyal to the command structure, and so it's very, very rare that you have that problem. But you come into politics, and in business, it's even rare, less rare. But you come into politics, and it's almost common. People come in and they say help you through your campaign, and then you give them a job because they're loyal, and you think they're loyal, and then they're not. That's the problem. And you've got to understand, I think, people that when they help you work on your campaign, now campaigning is over. That's a whole different function. There should be just a great big wall. When you're done campaigning, you stop the presses and you're going to start over. Now you're administrating government on behalf of the people, and you work for them. And sometimes people just forget that. I didn't. You know, people say there was people that got into government, and most of the departments are, I don't like this. There's too much bureaucracy. We heard a lot of that. And then there's other people in the beginning, I will come in and help you for 6 months. We had several of those that left. And they said they hit their 6 months. One had a kid. Several just says, I got to get back to my business. I got to get back to retirement. And the media would say there was a pop-up, there was a bingo game.
Mhm.
And they said, people would ask, why didn't you defend yourself in all that time? Because we know, they'd say, Mayor, we know the truth, but you're not defending yourself. And this is the problem. You start defending yourself once, and that's all you're going to do, because they're going to see, aha, we got him. We attacked him. And now he's got to sit there and defend himself every time we do an attack. So the attacks will just pick up. And I look at it this way: as the mayor or the governor, you're up here. All that stuff is down here, and that's noise. You govern. You don't read social media, especially about yourself. You do your job, because executive level government work is very difficult. It's very difficult, and I've done a lot of complex and difficult things in my life, but government is at the executive level is the worst of it. So you can't get tied up in that. And so I don't defend myself. A lot of it is absolutely untrue. The stuff that I can't. Dave's a bad administrator or is incompetent. I could sat there and defended myself over and over, and I just says, I'm not getting down into the mud, because all you're going to do is just get mud on you.
You don't run large organizations like the city of Anchorage or the state of Alaska by being a micromanager and into it. You have to set the vision, you have to set the tone, you have to put the right people, and you have to check in with them. But what gets accomplished is not because Dave drew it on a piece of paper that day. And so I think you need to get the quality people in there, and that's part of what we're going to do. You need to set the tone. And I read through, when he asked me to come on board, before I said yes, one of the things I did is I read through the 153-page transition report written by all the staff, the heads of all the departments at Anchorage. And then I read all the ADN articles and everything, and I thought, they're not exactly not telling the truth. There's a lot of problems identified in Anchorage, and as a Fairbanks man, I definitely know Anchorage is a mess. That was my impression before and
Right.
after he was there. But when I read through that report, I thought, holy crap, there's a lot of accomplishments listed in here. For some reason, they didn't make their way into the ADN's reporting.
Somehow.
But there's a long list of things that, the staff at Anchorage was able to accomplish under his leadership. And so I think we're going to learn from the mistakes, and we're going to build a better team. We're going to bring people in, and we're going to keep some continuity in government. But also, it's not a terrible thing sometimes to have people come in for a while, help out, give some expertise, and then leave. That's not the worst thing.
For sure. And I think to answer all that, I think it's been interesting with Who Hates Dave. For the first time, people have been like, oh, maybe that situation wasn't so crazy as I thought it was, and
People
I think
really
it's dropped
wanted
the
us to
tone.
defend ourselves, and I just made the executive decisions where, folks, we're not going to do that, because I had a comms team. Well, you got to get out there and you got to defend. There's this and this and this. And I says, you go read the newspapers, you go read the ADN, you do whatever you want to do, but I will make the determination of how we respond. And writ large, we're not going to respond to all these accusations.
well, I think doing it now is doing something.
Yeah, we're in a campaign mode, and we're looking back, and you created this website for this Who Hates Dave for this purpose, is to now everyone, I know it's a year and a half removed, let's go and address all these questions and get it out there. And in this format, since I'm not governing right now, I will defend myself. And then when we get into the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, we're going to go up here again, and we're not going to get down into the.
But right
into
now,
the
you
mess.
need to address why the snow plowing is so bad. I mean, we drove over here, and the roads are terrible. What?
And we've had hardly any snow. People think
He's
there's
not even mayor anymore, and the roads are still terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, to defend myself, and in a bit to defend the current mayor, it's the mayor doesn't plow snow. That is a direct responsibility administratively of the municipal manager. That's who that department reports up to. And so when the snow hit, you just ask your department folks, here, we prepared. It looks like the forecast is pretty big. Yeah, we're kind of prepared. And then we got, I think in less than 2 days, we got 49 inches on the upper hillside of very wet snow on top of no snow. We had no snow, and then all of a sudden it came and it stuck like concrete, and it created a whole special set of. It's not what we're having now, this little bit of snow, but I think we got a foot and a half over a few days here last week. This shouldn't be a problem. Our snow plan is for 10 inches of snow. We can handle a 10-inch snowfall, and we should be able to complete it, I think, in four days, as I recall. The people who do the snow plowing are great people. They're the unsung heroes of any administration, and all the mayor can do is simply go to the department and says, how many people do you need, and how much equipment do you need? And that's what we did. And
Robert asks, how are you going to mitigate a toxic relationship with the legislature, like the backstabbing opposition you had with the Anchorage Assembly. I think we've touched on that a bit.
Yeah.
Lisa writes, what is your stance on SB 91 when it was implemented? How would you have voted? Also, what did you see in relation to this as your time as mayor?
Well, when SB 91, so that's the modification of our criminal statutes, is a very, very extensive bill, very important. I actually wrote against, I editorialized against it. I thought it was a very big problem. We have a close friend who was fairly senior officer in APD, and she counseled heavily against it. They brought in the legislature, I believe, into APD headquarters down on MLK, and they were briefed that this is a bad idea, and what's going to happen if you pass it is this, and everything happened. The cops were exactly right, and SB 91 was a debacle. And were there fixes to it? Yeah, but it should have never happened in the first place. Police work, human beings have been doing police work, I think, for about 4,000 years. We've learned a few things, and there's just some things you don't change. And that should have never have happened. It could have worked if they had backfilled with all the money that they had promised, but I still think it was a bad idea. But old-fashioned police work, old-fashioned criminal justice is the best way forward.
What'd you see in Fairbanks, Josh?
We never locked up cases until after that happened. Now you go into Home Depot and there's all the tools are locked behind the cases and everything. That bill had an almost immediate effect on crime and theft and stuff. It just went through the roof, and I think it depressed the cops a little bit. They were like, "What am I even doing?"
Yeah.
We've been talking about morale at APD lately. It's kind of been at the forefront.
Yeah.
And morale is at an all-time low in the history of the municipality.
And well, I was a big supporter of APD. Gave them the largest pay increase in the history of the city because they had fallen behind. We had morale issues. We didn't have patrol cars that we needed. That was another issue that we addressed. We ordered a lot of cars. And because those are the three things that are important to a police officer: is support of leadership, pay, and then the vehicles, because that's their work office. And we resolved those issues, I think, quite well. But now the other two issues of that three-legged stool are cracking, and we're back to morale problems because this current administration is indirectly doing a defund operation of police. And it's on the assembly too. It's a worldview. You support your police officers because they're that last line between you and cultural failure and violence and everything else. That's why this whole, I'll get off on a tangent, but this whole notion of where we're attacking federal police officers, ICE in particular, for doing their job, and now they're trying to criminalize them. They're not going to get anywhere because of the supremacy clause, but we need to support our police officers.
Anchorage Fire used to have like 10,000 applicants. Cops and this state, particularly the troopers and the firefighters, those were privileged jobs, and people were pounding down the doors to get those jobs because people believed in public service, and we held those people up on a pedestal because they should be. I mean, that's honorable professions. We need to get back to that. We've had some national trends that have affected us, and we don't see the same number of applications for these, and that's a problem. It makes people more dangerous streets, and you want the best people to show up when there's a fire or when somebody has a heart attack or you got to have the best.
You get them by supporting them by vehicles and pay and all the other things you backfill, and that's what support really looks like across the country, and now even more so in Anchorage. We're not doing that.
So you were talking about how you felt unsafe walking out in Anchorage, and I was just wondering, did you walk past a bunch of mirrors, or what was making you scary?
Yeah,
good one.
Glass window.
Good one. Lieutenant Governor's got a personality.
Yeah.
If he doesn't win LG, stand-up's always swinging.
And if you don't laugh at his jokes, he is a combat Marine.
I wish Dave would come out with his jokes a little more publicly. You're hilarious.
You are so
person.
funny. People don't know that. People don't know that you're funny. You're
I am-
actually
I am.
so
Nobody
I
funny.
am-
thinks he's funny.
I am a stoic.
He's stoic.
I'm a stoic.
Stoic.
No, Norwegian / sweet. In fact, did
Oh,
you,
yeah.
Did
Oh, yeah.
you did you hear about the stoic, the Norwegian guy who loved his wife and almost told her so? Sorry.
That's the worst joke, and I heard it for the last 5 years.
It's just a little personality.
Yeah, sure, you betcha.
He actually really is funny, and he's very quick-witted, but people don't see that because they just get like Mayor Dave.
No, I put my perspective if I was, a short statured female as an example, and not, somebody who's big and strong and,
Yeah.
in those scenarios. And
You should just
Graffiti.
identify as a bigger man.
graffiti,
Yeah.
graffiti and trash and,
Didn't have to be
light
that way.
bulbs that
we
were
had, we had a
out
plan
and-
in place. Three and a half years ago, we had a plan in place. We started it. We are actually pouring concrete and for the structure. And then, just last week, the assembly appropriates how many $100,000, several $100,000 to stand up the exact same building because we brought it up. They shipped it up and put it down at the port for equipment, warm storage for equipment. When I wanted it for warm shelter for homeless people, and then compulsory treatment. You get them to the point where they choose jail or they choose treatment. They'll almost always choose treatment, and then we get them off the street. You have to force them off the street.
Well, the Muni
Otherwise, we're not going to get better.
determined it wasn't safe for human.
They build public schools in the Northwest Territories. With that, I was at a dinner in Fairbanks, and there was a guy who says, "Yeah, I build them all the time up in Fairbanks." It's not fit. It's an engineered, structured building. Sprung Steel. You should just go look at Sprung Steel. They build schools. They build malls.
And as
that's-
of today, we've had 3 outdoor deaths in 2026. All homeless individuals who were outside.
Yeah, we need to do things differently. I took my wife had never been to Europe, so I took my family last year to Italy. And prior to going, I'm doing all my reading about the traffic and driving and everything. And there's all this watch out for pickpockets and crime and this and that. I get over there and I was blown away. Like, it was way cleaner and safer than my hometown. Fairbanks didn't used to be that way. And
Right.
Anchorage,
Anchorage used 35 years ago. when
Hold
we
on,
got
Josh
here.
was about to talk bad about Anchorage.
hey. I was going to say Anchorage maybe
Hey,
always been that
we
way,
get
but
it,
Fairbanks-
okay.
None of that.
The Fairbanks
You're
man
off
has
the
something to say.
Criticize my town.
What?
Hey, by the way, did I mention Wolverines beat Fairbanks last night?
Yes, we did.
Ooh,
Go Wolverines.
Shots fired. All right. Levi writes, I'm seeing now that my opinions on the snow removal debacle during your administration were potentially short-sighted.
Ooh, learning. Wow.
We love
I'm
growth.
now noticing that LaFrance's management of recent snowfalls, which are much less challenging, have been atrocious. I'm taking a long look at my stances on you as mayor. Holy
What a mature.
What's his name? Levi?
smokes. Levi.
Very
Wish you would have
mature.
put a last name. Levi, you are the man or woman.
Well, we just explained things, but
Well,
I don't
I
want-
mean, for somebody to come
I'm in
out,
politics. I don't want to get caught defending my successor there.
So don't.
but for somebody to come out and say, hey,
I think it's important that people take the stance that Levi took, which is my opinion could have been short-sighted.
Yeah.
I've revisited it. I've experienced the same thing with someone else. So therefore, it's no longer just you. Maybe we have a snow plowing problem another way. It's not just Dave Bronson's fault, which I think is a really important thing, especially in politics,
Mhm.
you know?
Well, again, I'm going to stand up and defend the employees of the road department there and the snowplowing crews. I still admire them a great deal. They're doing the best they can with what they have. They need to be, this is Dave speaking, they need to be paid more. We need a few more of them if the director down there says so, and we need newer equipment.
How much of that is a state problem of not enough employees versus a city problem of not enough, and how much is an equipment problem, do you think?
Well, every department is different, and at the state, if it's Northern District, it depends on which district you're in. And I'm not going to sit here and speak to everything. I had my small portion. I had about 500 people working for me at the airport, and we have 3 shifts of heavy equipment operators, and it's supposed to be we've talked about this, 15 people per shift to clear snow, because we have a snow plan and there's certain metrics that go along with that, and we can't meet our metrics unless we have about 15 people per shift. We only have 6 to 7 employees per shift, 18 instead of 45. And then you ask why, and it's because we don't pay enough. It's real simple. We've done all the studies. We start at $29 an hour. The city starts at about $34.50. And I was at dinner last night with someone, heavy major construction company, and he says he's at 60 plus a $27 an hour package, 60. And he says it's going to 80 when the gas line starts. He says, so all the people that are heavy equipment operators now in the state are going to be all sucked up. And their plan is that we take for the gas line every heavy equipment operator they can from the state.
Just big shout out to Levi.
I agree.
On,
Great job, Levi.
Coming full
Good
circle on
name
here.
too.
Christina writes, I attended the YR event this weekend, Young Republicans. I heard some insane things from Bernadette on secretively building a road.
Oh boy.
What are your plans for infrastructure? Because her ideas are simply mental.
Well, I'm not going to speak against other candidates. We're not doing that on this campaign anyways. Others may do that. But so this is a construction project at how it works. The state really doesn't build roads. The state contracts to build roads. And this is the Ambler Road, I think, that we're talking about. And there's a section of it that's on federal land. And there's this notion that we'll just go in and build it before we get caught. What the state does is they contract with private contractors. This is real boilerplate, simple stuff. And the contractor will come in and the first thing they're going to ask, is this a legal project? They're going to have their engineers and their lawyers go over the contract. And if it's not a permitted project, they're never going to send their people and their equipment up to Ambler to build the road. We're never going to be that's the real world. This whole notion of, I think there's something like 30,000 federal employees plus in the state of Alaska. The notion that one of them is not going to notice a road constructed through a wilderness, I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to get noticed, and there'll be some kind of injunction on that.
Why do you think stuff like this is being said?
That's not my business.
She used an example about it being done in the past.
India.
There was
Speaking
a comment.
of construction, we have a construction guy on our team.
Yes.
I mean, I'm
Welcome,
a
Fairbanks
proud young
man.
Republican, and so I was at the event, and I don't know how you're going to secretly build a road when you're telling this in front of the news cameras that were there attending the event.
It's not a secret now.
So we've lost the secret part of there. But no, people have went to jail for just taking a dozer and driving it through state and national parks before. That's happened.
That's right. Yeah,
So
that's right.
we've tried that, and I think we're gonna try.
Not
and do
we
things.
personally.
That was a soundbite.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah.
And even a governor can go to state, federal, penitentiary. So
Yeah. So we're going to try and do things above board with the plan and open up development. The heart of her question was, how do we do development, right? And so some of that is working with the federal administration, right, to partner with them to open up resources. Some of that's going to be looking within our existing state resources at how we can facilitate more growth. Some of that's part of what Dunleavy's already started. He's looking at deregulation.
Yes.
So we're going to look at cutting some of those regulations. We're going to go out to businesses and we're going to listen and we're going to ask people and we're going to make changes. We're going to make government work for people. Like that's the bottom line. We can get into all numbers and details and there's all kinds of different ideas, but the bottom line is how do we make government serve the people, right? And so if there's a project that makes sense, we've got to find a way to do it responsibly and not be a roadblock. I was on the North Slope working years ago. We were building a man camp up there, and one of the machines, the Genie lifts, was leaking a little bit of hydraulic fluid. We stopped the job and we spent hours combing, looking for even so much as a speck of hydraulic fluid, putting them in like hazardous bags. So we do responsible, clean resource development, right? And we're going to keep doing that. This is the best place in the world for doing responsible clean. We just need to make sure that we don't be a hindrance and a roadblock. We actually facilitate it, because this should happen here before it happens anywhere else in the rest of the world.
And we got to get on these projects that make sense. You got to get to yes, and you got to get there quick. And the regulatory structure in both the city here and the state is very prohibitive. But the nice thing is Governor Dunleavy has teed this up very well with AO 360, which is his deregulation directive through his administrative order. And we, Josh and I, are full board in support of that. And we might even tighten up the time frames on that. But we had a meeting in Fairbanks a few days ago, and we met with some senior government workers who were, and they said, we're taking this real serious. The governor's deadly serious, and they're putting in, I thought gentleman said that they're putting in overtime to make sure that we go through our regulations. And that's what I would expect out of state employees is our regulatory structure is the enemy.
Especially at the municipality level.
And this has been going on for 50, 60 years.
I think
we've been slowly building. Now we're at critical mass, and government is kind of shutting itself down.
I think everyone across the political spectrum feels that.
Yeah.
I think also, depending upon where you are, your administration might be 3 or 4 years, even 8 years. Sometimes you don't get something done, and then it's like you start over again with the next administration.
And that'll be part of our goal, is to work with the legislature and come up with a long-term sustainable plan. I mean, I just listened to a resource panel, and they had representatives from mining and oil and gas and different industries there. And they all said the same thing. They didn't say, oh, we need lower taxes, we need less regulation. They said, yeah, that'd be great. But their primary thing was, we need predictability and stability. We can't be... the legislature can't be renegotiating taxes and what the rules are and what the goals are every session. We need a long-term plan. The business community wants to invest here, but they have to have a long-term plan so they know what the rules of the game are and they can see if it pencils out. So
we need stability. I was just talking to a potential investor in energy up here, and they says it's crazy what's going on. The regulatory, and it's just lock something in so we can plan, and you can't plan, and that's why things like as written right now, we're opposed to SB 92. That's a problem. We've it really bothers me, and I'll just speak from a personal sense here. I'll just talk about one company, Hillcorp. Great company. I talk to a lot of employees that work there. They say, great company to work for. They give you the liberty to make decisions in your own job. They don't have to make I want to turn a valve. Well, we're going to have to call somebody in London to see if we can turn this valve. Literally, I was told that. And we invite them up here. They develop our Cook Inlet. They develop the North Slope, and then we attack them. And we say, well, we're going to change your S Corp status. And we want to look at your books. We every year it seems like there's more and more taxes on these kinds of companies. Do we need to monitor them? Certainly, it's trust but verify. But our part of that social contract is to provide stability so that they can invest and develop our resources. That they do. We don't have the expertise. They do. And we're breaking that partnership, and I'm surprised more have not left the state. And we need to change the entire atmosphere, the entire attitude of government. Say these are our partners, who we need to trust but verify, but they're still our partners, and we need to work with them.
Yeah, I talked to members of the legislature, and that bill unfairly targets small businesses, right? And that's just not the way to do it. We can't have this attitude of, our budgets are tight, so let's see who we can squeeze for another nickel, and then we squeeze the next one. We've got to build coalitions, and that's what we want to do. We want to set the tone, set leadership, and build coalitions so we can have a long-term plan.
All right.
So private industry can have long-term plans. That's the important part.
Yeah, of course. Jonathan writes, in an interview in 2024, when asked about the advice you would give your past self, you said, I think in the very beginning, we came out probably too strong against the assembly. I am worried about this reflection with you. I know you tried to accomplish a lot of good things as mayor, but the very liberal assembly blocked a lot of what you tried to do. Is it possible that our state legislature might end up being the same? If you weren't able to achieve this as your time as mayor with a combative assembly, why do you think you'd be able to achieve those results as governor with the combative legislature? Me personally, I don't. Do you feel that the legislature is combative in the same regard?
It's I wouldn't say combative, and maybe it's a distinction without a difference. We have differing viewpoints down there. We all do. We're 61 individuals in between the governor and the legislature, 62. I've answered this in the sense that it doesn't have to be as combative as it is. But the question, in a sense, answers itself. The legislature, the assembly was rather, I think, radicalized. And I think so to this day, the majority of them are. And you have to fight radicalization. We need to come back to the middle. And we've drifted very far left. People are asking what's gone on with our city and our state and our country. And it's not that we've drifted to the right. It's that, you look at, and people ask, well, what are your politics? And I says, I'm a JFK Republican. And they go, oh, Dave, he was a Democrat. And I go, that's the point. That is exactly, you look at his policies from tax to national defense to spending to social issues. He was a devout Catholic. The rest, the whole spectrum, what's the name for it? Where the whole political spectrum shifts to the left. We've done that. I've been rock solid. I haven't changed since I got involved in politics at 10 years old in 1968. I haven't changed. Nothing has really changed. And I'm looked at as a radical for not changing. The radicals are the ones that change things. And I think we need to go back a couple decades and look at the political environment then. I says, maybe use that as the target for what we want. When it was just Democrats and Republicans, now it's radicalism. And there's a few on the right, not many, but there's a few. But on the left, there's a lot. I talk to these old school Democrats, and they say, we don't have a party anymore. The crazies took our party from us, and I feel sorry for them.
And we've had meetings, Dave, you and I, with legislators that basically say, we're looking for leadership. We're looking for people to partner with us who are willing to work and have these meetings and come up with build solutions.
Right. And again, last week I was condemned for saying I was going to go down and work with the legislature. That's by another candidate. And I'm just going, no, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to work real hard to work well with them. We're going to lead the Republican caucus. We're going to talk to them a lot. We're going to have a legislative liaison office that's going to be very robust and aggressive on working with both sides of the aisle. And we're going to communicate profusely. And that's kind of what we're doing here is we're communicating a lot. It's the same thing with dealing with the legislature. This is what we want. You're going to tell us what you want. How do we come to, and we agree on far more things than we want. We want more revenue for the private industry. We want more revenue for government. We want to do the things that government is supposed to do. On the right, there's a lot of things that maybe we don't think we should be doing in government. That's kind of my tilt, is that we got to assess what we're supposed to be doing as government.
Jeremy writes, what separates you apart from Dunleavy?
Good question.
I would say about 9 inches.
I was just about to say a foot taller.
No, I consider Governor Dunleavy a friend. He was a mentor early on. I think we talked about that before when we were talking about getting down in the mud and wrestling. He says, Dave, you're up here. They're down there, and you don't go down and wrestle with the pigs. He says, you're leading you're
Did you just call people?
No, it's a saying. If you get down and wrestle with the pigs, you get muddy and the pigs like it.
It's a metaphor, and we got a Marine here, so we'll speak slower. No, I'm teasing. And we talked, and in just kind of in a joking sense, we'd text each other on occasion. He says, "Hey, thanks for getting me off the front page. That's a good one." So, and we'd go back and forth with that. But difference, we're different people. I'm going to govern a different way. I've worked for him at the state. I like him. I like he's got a great strategic vision. I am a little more, I think, and he might differ. I'm a little more into nuts and bolts of government. I like it. At the city, I was always talking to my directors and trying to figure out what's going on, finding better. I wanted to be part of and maybe I got down too far into the weeds. That is quite possible, but that's just what I like to do. I think Josh is a lot the same way, and in this team, you get kind of a 2-for-1.
Whitney Clark, no questions. Simply love this idea. Good for you.
Aw,
The idea of the
Who hits Dave? I assume. Yeah. We got a lot of comments came in like that, especially on the last
And the
episode.
goal everyone needs to what this for is transparency, and going around the media, because the media is never going to tell the straight story. We're here to just tell you the truth, and that's what this is all about.
We're going to skip over this, but I want to give a shout out to Francine. Things went very south with so many people at the municipality during your administration. What are your thoughts on this and how to prevent it from happening again? Thank you. We've addressed that quite a bit.
What do you, well, I got to ask, what do you mean went south?
Just the turnover and the media.
There's
and
more turnover in this administration than there was in my administration.
Yeah, I don't think people know that.
It's because the media will not
Yeah.
report it. Everything is sunshine and
Well,
rainbows.
people need to understand that the reporter that the ADN used primarily to attack me, as soon as I left office, she became the comms director for the current mayor. I mean, those little anecdotes, are they important? Not super, but they should be
I think
recognized.
that's a conflict of interest.
What?
Well, I don't think it's conflict of interest, but it's something that the public needs to know. And now that we've gone around the media, that story's being told. I just told it.
So my memory, I'm not sure if it serves me right. Do you remember the woman's name that commented on how much room we had to write?
Yeah, Kathy.
Yes, you
It
said
was
600
Kathy?
characters.
Kathy.
I
She
thought it was
came back?
Well, Teresa
Well, you told her
Oh.
to. You told her she could keep posting.
Right.
Teresa came back with 3 comments, so shout out Teresa. Her first stating, "Thanks for taking my initial question about the apparent revolving door of employees during your term as mayor. To be clear, I was referring to your direct team, the guys who worked with you on the 8th floor, not Parks and Rec, not Department of Health, etc." And to be honest, I was a little surprised to have Alexis answer that question.
Well, Alexis was
I was there the whole time.
she was there. She went from my executive assistant to my chief of staff, and then to housing and homeless coordinator. So
I want to
Why
hear.
wouldn't I
want
answer?
to hear what you have to say on the subject.
okay, what's the question? I'm
Who
happy.
left from the 8th floor?
Hey, you're not supposed to talk.
I'm
Teresa
just,
doesn't want you
I'm asking
talking.
the questions.
Okay,
I'm not
she said
answering the
you're-
questions.
You're
Semantics.
not supposed to talk. Hey,
Who left
Dave.
on the 8th floor?
To be clear, she's referring to your direct team on the 8th floor,
so I
the
had.
revolving
Oh,
door.
let's stop. I'll just go down the hall here. So comms team was they had said they would give me 6 or 9 months, and they left at about that time. We brought in a new comms team. So I'm going
He's
around.
still very involved in the campaign. The first comms director. He gave us 6 months, and then
Yeah,
Alex,
I'm sorry for
stop answering.
So the municipal manager left, the first one. we don't need to go into that. And then we got our permanent municipal manager stayed, and did a great job. Deputy municipal manager stayed.
I'm not allowed to speak, sir.
Oh, my second EA executive assistant left. She got a job at the fire department.
How about your chief of staff?
Chief of staff.
Where did she go?
My chief of staff. Well, my first chief of staff was a former lieutenant governor, and he says, he gave me a time frame, 3 or 6 months, I can't remember. And then he went to the space launch facility. They had some management challenges over there. And then so I had another chief of staff who went over to Senator Sullivan's office. Alexis, you went to Housing and Homeless at Health Department. I'm trying to go through the list. I mean, we're trying to get an answer.
We all stayed on the team. We just like kind of followed pursuits. I'm not allowed to answer.
Yeah, so
Thanks for your self-awareness this time.
yeah.
I'll be here, guys.
All right, moving on. Teresa has 2 more. Mr. Bronson, I'm interested in hearing about your stance on trawling after you described it as immoral
Yes, it is.
in your first podcast episode. I wonder if you believe all trawling is immoral.
All trawling?
All trawling is immoral, or whether there's a way to do it according to the state constitution, Article 8, Section 4, Section 8.4, which goes on to write, sustained yield, fish, forests, wildlife, grasslands, and other replenishable resources belonging to the state shall be utilized, developed, and maintained on a sustained yield principle, subject to preferential among beneficial uses.
Right. Well, our resources, we are compelled to manage them for the best and greatest benefit for the citizens of the state. Now let's get into something a little technical for a sec. So we have jurisdiction out to 3 miles. The state of Texas has 11 miles. And I'm just telling you, day one, we're going to figure out how to get us to 11 miles, because that solves a lot of the problems, especially when there's lots of islands. So Prince William and Southeast. Bering Sea, not so much because it's so much big open ocean, but any little bit helps. So now to trawling, is trawling in and of itself, it's a very efficient way of catching fish, but there's a lot more to it. One is trawling that hits the bottom. That's just got to stop. And they're not, in a lot of these areas, they're not supposed to do it. And they say, oh, we don't do it. And then they have starfish and crabs come up in their net. And we have people, and they'll say, well, hey, I'm going to give you some crab meat. Well, you're on the bottom. You're not supposed to be on the bottom. You've acknowledged it because you're out there giving your bycatch, your crab, because you're not supposed to be catching that because you're fishing for pollock. You're just giving. You have admitted you broke the law. So this is trawling and bycatch together. Those are some of the most complicated. There's, I think, 52 different fisheries. We're taking roughly 3 billion pounds of pollock out of the Bering Sea every year. That's not sustainable, and that's the feeder fish, or the forage fish that everything else feeds on. So one of the biggest mortalities, the single biggest mortality input for large kings is orcas. And if the orcas can be over here eating pollock, which you're stripping of the ocean, they'll eat less. The more pollock you have, the less everything else is eaten. And it's not that simple in its entirety. And with all these different fisheries, I'm kind of speaking in that regard to Area M. There's a lot going on here. But I do know this. We're not supposed to be dragging chains along the bottom of the ocean. That's a big one. And we're not supposed to be wasting fish, especially the most valuable halibut fish. We're dragging chains along through our halibut nurseries in the Bering Sea. We're slaughtering all these little 5-pound halibut someday. And now we're looking at going from 2 fish a day. When I got up here, it was 3 or 4 fish a day. Now it's 2 fish a day. And then there's debate here. The most recent proposal is to go to 1 halibut a day. I'm asking the question, why do I put gas in my boat? I'm a Prince William guy. I have a Prince William boat. Why do I drag my boat down to Whittier anymore for 1 halibut? It doesn't make sense.
She goes on to write, it seems to me within the current political space, ramped up trawling debate, sport fishing is being pitted against trawling as a preferred method of using our natural resources. How do you resolve this conflict in light of the state constitution, common use versus sustained yield?
Well, I think she's framing it wrong. It's not trawling against sport. It's trawling against commercial fishery. Trawling is damaging all the other commercial fisheries, which are very important, and I would make the argument more important to the state because it brings in more state revenue for Alaskans. So is it against sport fishing? Well, certainly is. It's a zero-sum game. There's only so many fish in the ocean of a specific kind. But it's also against the other commercial fisheries that they're competing for the same fish. And I just want to comment a little bit on the on these large trawling vessels. They're impacting. We've talked about it before. They're impacting, say in Dutch, where the folks that used to go out and crab in the boats, we have all the TV shows about. Now they're just tenders. They're just supporting these massive trawlers
because they don't have
these
choice.
trawlers. So what we've done is we've got rid of the canneries on shore. So no jobs for us, no taxes, no nothing. They've gotten rid of the canneries, the processors. Everything is on a boat that doesn't buy its fuel from us. It doesn't employ our people. They bring people from overseas, the lower 48. You tell me what we get from trawling. Now, they're putting out numbers. I'm seeing them, and they're not bad people. They're fighting for their way of life. But their way of life, and they live in the lower 48 or they live overseas, their way of life is not as important as our way of life to me. Okay, we've got to fight for, you talk to Dan Sullivan's wife, Julie. She says, we don't go up to fish camp anymore. It's a cultural thing. She's Alaska Native. We don't do that, and we haven't done it for years. And now I don't remember what the extension is. We're looking at going to 7 or 11 years, I think is the most recent proposal. I can't remember. And it's like, well, that's a cultural thing because you take they've got older daughters now, but you take young kids and you take 7 or 8 or 9 years out of their life where they can't go into fish camp or run a fish wheel or however they catch. Or dip net, because I'm a Chitina dip netter. I used to be. I'm now a Kenai dip netter. You take that away, it's gone. They lose that experience. And we need to fight for that because if there are fish, if they're recognized as Alaskan fish, then we should control them. That's why I'm fighting for 11 versus 3 miles. And that's why I will appoint on the MPFMC, not appoint, but nominate for every position, more sport fishermen representation and commercial fishermen because it's trawl versus everything else.
How does there's obviously a massive uprising for people wanting to ban it. Is that possible from your position, or how does it evolve?
My sense of the history of it, when it starts in Norway and the North Sea and the Pollock, and then they come to the Grand Banks and they wound up banning it. The banning does follow. If we don't get this fixed real quick, the bans are just going to come because the numbers, the science is going to demand it. So I think the current trawling problem that we're having is getting so great that it's answering itself. And we're going to shut down trawling industries, shut down trawling fisheries because we're going to have to.
Are you for a ban on record? Are you for a ban?
If the scientists say a
trawling?
ban is helpful, yes, I am for a ban.
That's my mayor.
My grandma came up here and worked on a cannery, right? So
Right.
part of the reason I'm here today is because canneries were happening in the state, right?
Yeah.
And now if we're on the wrong side of that issue and that all that resource is going away and those jobs aren't coming here, policy affects future generations like you're talking about. So I really appreciate that answer because I can look in my direct lineage and say part of the reason I'm here is because fishing was onshore and the canneries were onshore.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
had jobs.
I think it's really important for the cultural aspect too. I mean, like what makes Alaska, Alaska? It's really truly the culture and, taking out, just like you said, generations of children who don't get that part of their culture. I mean, you're reframing Alaska culture. And I think that's not great for us as a state. We should be fighting for our culture and fighting for our history and for our fish.
100%.
Dave Maxwell writes, at your first appearance at the Wasilla Hangar, I asked you a question. Will you use your political capital to speak on behalf of the majority of Alaskans for things that are important to them, even when it is not in your jurisdiction to do so? Unlike Dunleavy, who has consistently walked away from his constituents, your answer then was, Mike is a friend of mine and I will not throw him under the bus. Is this still true? If so, how are you really different than Mike Dunleavy? Be specific, please.
Well, he just said he'd support a ban, and that's not something he has the power to do. So that's him speaking out on an issue that
Yeah.
affects all Alaskans that he can't completely control.
The feds control it. Would I advocate for a ban? Certainly.
Yeah, I think a large part of, I hate the phrase the bully pulpit, but a large part of leaders' jobs is to advocate for people. And if it's something you can directly control, you don't advocate, you fix it. But if it's not and you have a bigger platform, then you advocate for all Alaskans. Absolutely.
Well, let me give you another example. It's a little technical, but it's very apropos, and it's this. Do I have the ability to place nuclear reactors in, say, in villages where they could really, really use them, or even large reactors here in Anchorage? I don't have that ability, but I've already committed publicly. I'm going to go to Secretary Wright and ask for expedited permitting and help with financing nuclear reactors, one at Ted Stevens International Airport and others throughout the state, especially out west in the villages. And that's a bully pulpit issue. I'll stand in his office in D.C. and with my team, and I'll say, "This is what I got to have. Let's get this done." And with the new reactors, they're safe. They're ready to go. They're plug and play. And I think we need. But that's another example of what I'm fighting for. Yeah, everything isn't within your. You don't just focus on what's in your official jurisdiction. You fight for everything. Again, I don't have the ability to go from 3 miles to 11 miles on our shoreline for jurisdiction, but I'll fight for that. I'll also fight and go to the federal government and fight for getting our land, transferring federal land into state land, so then we have local control of our land, so then we can move that into the private sector or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, his question is kind of in our job description, because if you elect us, we're going to be the executives that administer the law and the government. But part of our job is to work with the legislature to fix issues that are outside of our control, to say, hey, we're doing this job, but we're running up against this thing. We could serve the people better if you fixed this law. And so that's us advocating on the behalf of people. That's what you're hiring us for.
I think a big thing, and this certainly goes on both sides of the political spectrum. I think people have their stance, like saying Dunleavy walked away from his constituents. But depending upon where you are, he might have walked towards you and not away from you. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're never going to be able to solidify everybody. You're never going to be able to appease everybody. And I think that's where people get it wrong. You got to understand that's how it works. And it's always going to work that way.
Right.
Bob,
that is a good question what he asked. So, and then it strikes to the earlier question that how do you manage differently, or how do you lead differently? You know, you lead people, you manage things. That's probably an area where we'll take a different track.
Well, and you just said, you know, it's really hard to please everybody. That's part of the reason why lieutenant colonels and pilots and business people and investment managers don't get into politics, because you're like going to work really hard to get a job where you're going to end up irritating a lot of people.
What are you doing here, man? What are you doing here?
Exactly. Like what
I
are we
could
doing
literally
here?
be on a beach.
there's if you don't have a really strong sense of civics
Public
and duty,
service.
you don't do this if you've got integrity.
Well, this is hilarious. Jackie O writes, I hope you don't pick a career politician for your LG. Really hoping it's someone with
The Lord
actual
provides.
business experience. I'm tired of the same old Republican conveyor belt candidates. We want someone with
I've heard
real
that. Conveyor belt
world
candidates. I've heard that before.
private sector acumen.
Yes, sir.
Welcome. This is Josh Church,
Fairbanks man.
the
Fairbanks man.
Yeah. I have never held any office. I've never ran for any office until now.
Your wife didn't want you to run for office. She
Yeah.
said, don't do it.
This is a
She
first.
told me through him no 3 or 4 times.
Jackie,
Wrong answer. Come back in a couple days.
Thank you for that comment. It was great timing as well.
There wasn't a question there?
Nope.
Oh, so
Just a comment.
She
you
was
actually
just-
did finish that one.
She
then.
was
Okay.
just, and obviously this happened prior to you announcing. So Bob writes, Trump's first term was one long slog of obstructionists keeping him from being effective.
Yeah.
His second term, he took office with a complete new team already ready to go and had an extremely defective second term thus far. Interesting.
I think he means effective.
Effective.
Yeah, that's completely out of context.
I'm like Ron Burgundy. I just read it exactly as it's on the teleprompter here. Okay. After your experience with running RICO violation, that is our assembly, during your mayoral term, have you managed to assemble a group of hires that will hit the ground running in order to attempt to rein in spending on failed and fraudulent spending by the legislature and some of the many multi-letter bureaucracies in the state? Question mark.
Finances.
Yeah, and I've already started that with the first one, the only one that I can hire. It'll be a mix. Josh and I, and the commitment that needs to be probably out there is that this is a partnership. Obviously, I've been spending a whole life making command decisions, sometimes in a big hurry. In government, you normally don't need to make these rush decisions, but the first one was Josh, and I think that's a good indication of what it's going to look like going forward. It'll be a combination of new people with old technical professionals, and of course, the level that we focus on is the commissioner level, bringing on, and we've already started conversations with a group of advisors to us on who would be good in the right positions. And what those names are, we'll never divulge them until the time comes, because that's the process. And a lot of people are willing to advise us. They're not looking for jobs. They're looking to help us get to the right people that we then eventually will bring on board. But the commissioner level, the 15 commissioners, those are actually critical positions.
Cash Arrington writes, will Mr. Bronson support? Okay. Cash, just so you know, talk to Dave directly, because he's actually getting these directly to him. And I want everyone to know they can actually reach Dave first.
That's why we're doing this.
Cash Arrington, will Mr. Bronson support nuclear energy as governor of Alaska?
Heck yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to. He's already was talking about it for the airport. I'm trying to work with the Sullivan's team and anybody else I can work with. The defense. Trump just came out and said he wants $1.5 trillion for the Defense Department, and Trump has a favored spot of Alaska. Fort Wainwright, right outside of Fairbanks, has one of the older power plants in the country. So we need to replace that one. And if it's feasible, if it makes sense, we can get a nuclear one put in there and oversize it to help feed the community with lower power cost. So that plant needs to get replaced anyways. We might as well do one that is going to help the community.
And people need to understand that reactors produce two things. They produce heat and they produce electricity, and you can strike that balance on how you want it. So you can heat buildings, you can illuminate buildings, you can light buildings. My vision is, especially in remote parts of Alaska, and more remote, out west, probably, Nome, Kotzebue, and Bethel to start with. We look at and work with the locals there to bring in these small modular reactors, where instead of going forward, we have to keep hauling diesel out to generators that seem to break down all too often.
You were at the AEA conference when they did that presentation about how stuff's degrading and what the Alaska Energy Authority is doing.
And we have the fundamental power of the universe, which is the atom. We need to harness that in a way that it serves our people, serves us. And I think nuclear reactors are, I was a bomber guy, and we used to have nukes when we'd sit on alert. It's nothing to be afraid of. It just isn't. And especially with the new TRISO type, particle type reactors, it's very safe. And I think this is a way to move forward. In the capital costs, and now the FAA Department of Energy has come in and said, hey, one of our functions are not just to permit reactors, but to help finance them. And that's Secretary Wright, who had a chance to speak at length with here this summer. So this past summer.
And I think for people that have concerns, these small scale nuclear reactors are very different than some of the ones in the past. And this is already happening in Eielson. They're looking at putting them out, which is the Air Force Base outside of where I'm from.
There just seems to be this national hesitation. I don't know if it's fear of us older people and the China syndrome and and those challenges that we used to face many decades ago. No, this is a new thing, and this is a safe thing, and therefore it's a good thing for us.
Chris writes, at your announcement for lieutenant governor, why did Josh cry so much? I think that's more of a Josh
Yeah,
question.
that's probably a me question.
I was wondering that myself. No. He's passionate.
Yeah, I'm a numbers guy. I'm a finance guy, and I try and avoid emotional discussions. And that hit me a little bit harder than I was expecting. I care about this state. I've had a great opportunity. I care about my kids. I care about my country, and I really believe in service. And I think that service needs to matter. And the politicians and the leaders need to honor that service, right? They need to take it seriously and not waste it.
Good answer.
You cried a little too long. Josh.
He didn't cry. He got a little choked up.
Marines never cry.
Do you cry at The Notebook when you watch The Notebook?
What would your
That's
wife?
like, have
Hold
you
on.
stopped
What would your
meeting your wife?
What would your wife say about how much
Who
you cry?
admits to watching The Notebook?
Your wife's gonna come out and be like, he cries weekly.
My wife is actually tougher than me. She's a firefighter and a paramedic. I don't get a lot of sympathy at home there.
And she's a mom to 3 kids, so
And she's
Yeah,
bless her
little
soul.
kids.
So yeah, in my family, as the former special operations guy, I'm the emotional one.
Yeah.
Perfect. Janice writes, Dave, with the 16,000 Republican candidates running, how are you possibly going to set yourself apart?
I think I already have 3 years of experience in a very tough political environment. I mean, we've talked about that a couple of times. I think going down to Juneau, they're very experienced politicians down there, most of them, the older ones. But I think they want to get things done. For the sake of getting things done, the assembly didn't. They just didn't know what they were doing. I've said that before. Homelessness, crime control, spending. It's a different environment. So I will. It's my experience dealing with that. I think because I'm the only one with that experience, political executive experience. Elected experience, and I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that into Juneau.
I think there's a difference between being a career politician, having executive experience, and being a Fairbanks man. It's like I think you're personally in the middle. You've had the experience.
I've
you've
had
seen
experience.
it, but you're not a career politician. A lot of people like to call you a career politician because you're running again.
Well, leadership transcends professions. A lot of the skills of leadership, a lot of them, not all, they work in every environment. But then, I spent my time leading mostly professional people, and I had one point in the early National Guard where I had, a couple hundred enlisted people, by and large, working for me. A few officers, some very senior NCOs, and some enlisted people, but it wasn't problematic. Now, Josh's experience having, say, a bunch of young Marines working for him, and there's no room for discussion. It says you will take that position. You may get killed in the process, but that's not the issue right now. You will take the position. That's a different set of leadership. And I adapt to both. When I was an airline captain or an aircraft commander in the Air Force, I would adapt to who I was leading. The environment kind of dictates your style. But the leadership, in and of itself, those skill sets, they transcend most professions, most environments.
Yeah, a good leader looks at the people and the situation, and he adapts to respond to the need. And in my book, he spent 20 years, worked his way up to a lieutenant colonel, 20 years in the military, and he spent 3 years as mayor. So that makes him like 85% military experienced leader and like 15% politician. So I'm okay with that.
Somebody do the math on 15%. I want to make sure this guy knows what he's saying.
And he's already distinguished himself. The question is, how have you? His record, for sure, his experience, but he's leading in all the polls. He's ahead in 4 of the polls. And part of that's because people see that he's distinguished himself. And then we're building the best team. We've already got some of the best people in Fairbanks backing us and around the state. So
And Anchorage.
that's just going to continue to show as more and more people come out saying, hey, we're a part of this team.
And Josh, I think you kind of bridge the gap from like the normies people, like the everyday average people, to the politicians. Because sometimes we feel like there's a break between, up here and down there. And you're just a regular
Call me
guy.
half normal.
Was that I think that was a dig at Fairbanks.
It was not. You're just a Fairbanks man, and you really kind of bridge the gap of like, you're an everyday man in Alaska. And it's like you have a family and you have a wife.
He's
And
got
like,
the beard.
exactly. He likes to hunt, fish, fly.
Snow machine, trap,
Yeah.
do all that stuff.
And you're kind of like
Sounds like me.
you're kind of putting your life on the line to like go into this political realm. And I think that kind of brings like a breath of fresh air, especially like I know that the feedback I've received is like, we're glad that you're young. As a young person, I think, when you think like, oh, the 100-year-old politician, here they go again. It's like, now we're bringing in this, no, sorry, sir. We're bringing in this fresh perspective of like, how do we keep young people in Alaska? And you really have that perspective because you are a young person.
Because
in
we have to
Alaska.
keep the young people. We're not going to survive if our young people don't come back from college. If they don't stay here, they can't afford to live here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to build a team to govern for all Alaskans, right? And so that's every generation, and that's what we're going to do.
Yep.
Well, that is looking like all the submissions we have for this week. Keep the comments coming in. I want to reiterate, obviously the site is called Who Hates Dave. I believe the hate is kind of worn off.
Yeah,
So are you asking
we
for more
need
hate?
more hate.
Well, here's my opinion.
Please.
The hate that you've been getting is redundant at this point. We're not getting new hate we haven't heard before
So we
or
want fresh
addressed.
hate, not old stale hate.
Exactly. But I want people to know this is a real way to connect with Dave and now Josh, Fairbanks man, to ask questions that matter to you. And they're right off the cuff. So you're getting the responses just like you're sitting here. So thanks to everybody.
Can I close out?
Sure.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us on episode 2 of Who Hates Dave podcast. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or any hate you want to throw this way, visit us at whohatesdave.com and submit your questions and concerns.
Don't think
No, I just want to say real thanks to the people, on both sides of either supporting me or hating me. It takes time and effort to write that up and to articulate, and they were pretty much in good taste. They were good, sincere questions and comments. So really appreciate that. All good.
And we don't have all the answers. So in this format, or come up and talk to me or call me, like anybody who has a concern or a suggestion on to make this state better,
Yeah.
we're here to listen. And we're going to help make that happen.
perfect.
Got a good thing coming, and it's all I